All right.
Coming down in 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of our ShawLocal.com Bears Insider Podcast. I am Hub Arkush, joined by my co-hosts, as I am each week, our ShawLocal.com Bears Insider beat reporter for the Bears, Sean Hammond, is here. Our Shaw Media Group sports editor, Kyle Nabors, with us as well. And guys, a busy week in the National Football League in Chicago. 1,000 stories we could talk about. I think, and I'm going to start the watch now. We're going to limit this to 3 minutes, but we got to just acknowledge that the Bears lost a game that they should have won last Sunday. They lost to a team that they appeared to be better than. The defense completely collapsed for the first time that I can recall in a long time. Fortunately, Sean does his Bear Down Nerd Up column every Tuesday, I believe it is, and detailed it for us. It was Christmas Eve of 2016, the last time the Bears defense allowed as much total offense as they did Sunday. And Sean, we're sitting there watching it in the press box last week, just kind of looking at each other, trying to figure out what was going on down there, because it was a complete collapse. I mean, Roquan Smith didn't play well. Roquan Smith always plays well. And so when you see him getting blown out of the hole on run fits, you know something is wrong with that defense.
Yeah, it was drive after drive in that second half. And I don't know, maybe it's just one of those things. They need to wash their hands of this game and move on. Obviously, it wasn't a good performance in the second half. And all three of those touchdown drives and the field goal drive at the end, those were quick drives. They were all under 3 minutes long, and they're just moving right down the field. And it was really unusual to see that, almost no fight from the Bears defense in that second half. And that's, we haven't, they might play poorly sometimes, but they're usually still in there fighting. And that was just uncharacteristic.
Kyle, I'll tell you what's interesting is, and, we all talk to various, sources, peers, fellow reporters, insiders, whatever you want to call them, during the course of the week. And I've talked this week to a couple of former head coaches, a couple of my buddies who I've become friends with as broadcast partners with some of my national radio stuff, who are literally Hall of Famers. They all kind of focused in on the same thing. And we've talked about this on and off. The halftime adjustments were unbelievable. I mean, the defense was not good all day. It was misleading. In the first half, the 49ers shot themselves in the foot a few times. But Kyle Shanahan and his staff went in and made changes at halftime, came out and just blew the Bears away. It's misleading because the Bears had that long opening drive. But from the time the 49ers got the ball in the second half, it was all San Francisco. And it's interesting because all the haters out there and everybody having fun with it. No, maybe they're better with Nagy not there. They're not particularly good at halftime adjustments when Matt is there, or haven't been, over the course of his stay. But you have to wonder if that's not where his absence as the head coach hurt them a little bit last Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know how to quantify that. I mean, they've been bad, as you said, with or without him, it appears now, at halftime adjustments. That was about as stark as you've seen, though. There's always been it's never been a strong suit, but that game completely changed in the second half. Defensively, they, as you said, the doors were blowing off, but offensively, they, as well as Justin Fields played in the second half, the offense really kind of came to slow down in that second half.
Yeah, and think about it, people. I'm not saying that was the issue. I'm not saying if Matt Nagy is there, it's any different. Not even suggesting it. Just pointing out that, he wasn't there. First time ever. Chris Tabor is an outstanding special teams coach. He's a great guy. I thought he did a really good job. He was very head coach-like. He was decisive. But you didn't have your head coach there, and the halftime adjustments were just kind of stark and stunning. So it's one little thing to look at. I think the bigger issue, though, is how could that happen? Now, let's go to the next step. No Khalil Mack. And Khalil Mack is one of the 3 or 4 best defensive players in football. He's been playing on one leg the last few weeks. You don't want him out there if he's hurt. But I think, Sean, what people need to realize is simply as the leader of that defense and as a guy everybody looks to, there's value in that. And that was missing as well. And again, none of these are excuses. I'm just looking for explanations as to how that came apart so completely.
Yeah, and look, the fact of the matter is the last 2 weeks, the pass rush just hasn't been there. They have one quarterback hit in the last 2 games. And you're without Robert Quinn, who's on the COVID list and 2 weeks ago, and then you're obviously without Khalil Mack last week. against the 49ers. And it's just not, they're not finding the same success when they're only using one of those guys. They've been really good together when they're both in there, and they've, they were before they missed some time here, they were among the top sack leaders in the NFL, and now you're trying to do that with a diminished group, and that's why it's so important to get Khalil Mack back there as quickly as you can, healthy, because they were a really good 1-2 punch, and you're going to need that. Not just for the pass rush, but for your whole defense.
That's concerning for the long term health of your defense, though. I mean, Khalil Mack, you guys are both right. I mean, he's a top 3 or 4 defender in the league. But if that's how far your defense falls, if one player misses, that's concerning, because Khalil Mack, I mean, is becoming a veteran at this point, to where that's not a great look.
And I asked Bill Shuey, the outside linebackers coach, about that, and he said, we're playing some really good tackles in those games, and yes, that's true. And they don't look at it necessarily. I think I phrased the question like, okay, you guys were really good for 6 games, and now what's kind of been going on the last 2 weeks, and he said, well, we really look at it as a game by game thing, and that matchup against that tackle, and while that's fair, that's good.
I mean, that's fair, but I mean, this was a San Francisco team that was not particularly good on offense coming into the game. Let's not act like this is a team that was in a Super Bowl a couple of years ago.
Right.
Well, they were in a Super Bowl.
They were.
They are not playing at that level.
I know what you meant.
2 years later. Yeah.
I mean, I was just having fun with you there. I know what you meant. But guys, you got to look at that both ways, because Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn are both all pros, former defensive MVPs. So that's a couple pretty good pass rushers those tackles we're going against too. So clearly, and I don't think Shuey's making excuses either. I think we're just all looking for explanations at this point. And Kyle, to your point, that's not all. On the second play of the game, Eddie Jackson goes down. Now, Eddie Jackson has been much maligned over the last year and a half, but treated, I think, very unfairly this year, because he's played much better this year. His tackling has still been an issue on occasions, but he has played much better as the anchor in that group. So, now you're up front, you got Akeem Hicks playing on one leg, and I think that's pretty obvious. Then you're missing Khalil Mack in the middle, and now you're missing Eddie Jackson on the back end. Kendall Vildor had a tough day, and the kid, I think, is going to be good. I think he's played better than many might have expected through the first 7 weeks, starting in his second year out of Georgia Southern. But he had a tough day on Sunday. And so with him struggling, with Jackson gone, with no pressure, and then, as I said, Sean, I thought the run defense was as or more concerning as the pass defense in the second half. And it has been for 3 weeks now, guys. They've gone from 8th in the league against the run to 23rd in 3 weeks. And that's how bad they're getting toasted there. But it was the first time that I noticed that Roquan Smith was struggling. Now, who knows what's going on there? Alec Ogletree got hurt in the middle of the game. Denny Trevathan had been back for a few weeks. He's played fairly well. So it's something you have to hope that it's an aberration, a blip on the graph, and it could very well be, because all that talent is still there. Now, as we record, it seems unlikely that Khalil Mack will be ready to go Monday night, or Eddie Jackson for that matter, but at least now with a week to prepare for it, in the hopes that, maybe Akeem Hicks is a week healthier. You'll have to see what happens. And obviously the Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to present the same challenges on offense. Not that the 49ers have been great on offense, but at least, they had some weapons that you knew could dent you. The Steelers have been looking for that so far. So certainly defense, a big, big concern. And then offensively, yes, Justin Fields had his best game. They were much better on third down. They were also a different team in the second half than they were in the first half after they got that last touchdown. And so, that's how you end up a 3-5 football team, Sean.
Yeah. Certainly, it was a really good day for Fields, just compared to what we've seen in some of these early games. And he was making quick decisions, and when he wanted to run, he ran, and he ran the ball well. He totaled 100 yards, first Bears quarterback in 5 decades to do that. So that's all positive stuff. But we're still in that same spot here, where we're saying we need to see the consistency, and it needs to, they need to finish with touchdowns, really, and they weren't doing that enough against the 49ers, and they couldn't take advantage of how well they played in that first half, when their defense was rolling a little bit.
All right, guys. Well, let's move forward. Let's talk about where it leaves them. And so we start by then going to Tuesday with the trade deadline having come and gone, and the Bears doing literally nothing. Kyle, I tweeted from the press box Sunday immediately following the Deebo Samuel 84-yard screen pass. Okay, now we know the Bears need to be sellers on Tuesday. Sell everything you can, take any draft pick you can. That was in the moment. That would have been nice. I'd still do it if it was doable. But the part I left out, because you only get 280 characters, is the Bears didn't have much to offer that anybody was going to give them anything for. You knew with the contracts it was going to be tough to move Allen Robinson and Akeem Hicks, even if they tried to. There was just no offers worthwhile out there. If you look at what happened around the league, not just with the Bears, for any of your younger talent. What I can't get my arms around is why Andy Dalton and Nick Foles are still here. I find it impossible to believe that they couldn't have gotten a 6 or a 7 for one of them, which, Khalil Herbert is a 6. Kyrus Tonga is a 7. I think you can get football players. And it just seems weird that a team like the Saints, a team like the Cowboys, of course, Cooper Rush might have stuck a fork in that one, but he shouldn't have, because that's one game. And so other than not dealing one of the veteran quarterbacks, disappointed. I don't know that you really can be, because it was a long shot to begin with, but it's clear, at least now you know where you're at. This is the team you got the rest of the year, and so the focus becomes play as well as you can to put your young quarterback in as good a situation as possible to develop.
Yeah, going back to the quarterback, or not being able to move either quarterback, I think it's tough when you're talking about in-season trade with those guys, because teams, if they're bringing a guy in, they probably want some familiarity with the system. I think you saw that with the Jets going and getting Joe Flacco the other day, with the silliness that's happening up in Green Bay and them needing another body. They brought Blake Bortles in, who had been up in camp with them. I think Dalton down to Dallas made a little bit of sense, as you said. But I think that's part of the reason why you didn't see either of those guys move, was there's just not a lot of teams that want to bring in a guy and try and get him up to speed mid-season. I still am a little bit surprised that someone didn't at least take a flyer. But yeah, I mean, now the focus, I thought you made an interesting point in your column talking about the trade deadline, was that, you don't want to just give people away to give them away, particularly if you're leaving yourself devoid of talent and you're making things more difficult on Justin Fields. I do think there's some merit to giving him the best talent so he can develop throughout the rest of this year. I mean, you don't want him out there with a bunch of bums at wide receiver, trying to figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, I think the part that people miss with this is that basically all you can do at the trade deadline is subtract and hopefully help yourself for next year, unless you're a buyer. That becomes a different situation. And so with all the struggles they continue to have, Justin Fields played his best game Sunday against the 49ers, but the offense was still bad. Bad in a big way when you look at 323 yards of offense. I think it was Potsy who from the Sun-Times who did the homework, but that 323 yards was the 166th least production this year out of 224 games to that point, or something like that. Their 175 yards of gross passing, it was 148 yards net. That's pathetic. The Bears are literally 30 or 40 yards a game behind the 31st ranked offense in the NFL right now. And so you still have so much work to do. And you have at least one good thing now, in that, there's only two ways that Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are secure that they're saving their jobs, which is either win a lot of games and get back to the playoffs. And that's still doable. We're not going to talk about it here. We're not going to pretend it's likely. We know who they are. They're a 3-5 football team, but that also means that they could finish 12-5. So that's one goal, that they look at. The far more likely one is that they win some games and all of a sudden the offense takes off, much like it did the last 6 weeks last season, and so how do you make that happen? Well, not by getting less talented on offense. So we don't know what their goals were at 8 o'clock Monday morning until 3 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. We don't know if they didn't try desperately and were unable. We don't know if they purposely wanted to keep people, but we know that that's where they're at. And so the realistic evaluation of it now is it's not necessarily a good thing, but it's not all bad either, at least as it relates to continuing to try and develop Justin Fields.
No, and maybe that's part of their thinking too. They did it last year. They were able to, things looked pretty bad through November last year, and they were able to turn that around and play a little bit better in December. And I think it's more of an uphill battle to make the playoffs this year than maybe last year. But considering where they're at here at 3-5, but Allen Robinson is still going to be valuable for your team. And sure, you could have maybe flipped him for some sort of assets, but it's important to have those pieces around Justin Fields if you're going to see that progress here. And sure, maybe they haven't used him as well as they could have, but there's no reason that they can't work through that and figure out ways to get him the ball.
Yeah, well, that's actually, as we, I was a couple minutes late this morning because I'm working on a column on that with some stats to back it up in the whole Allen Robinson story, which may be another interesting segue here, Kyle, because before we get back to where the Bears are at, it wasn't an uneventful trade deadline. I mean, things got interesting between 3 o'clock Tuesday and by noon on Wednesday. We have the OBJ fiasco in Cleveland that, who knows what to make of it, whether it's all OBJ, whether it's all his dad, whether it's a group effort. But there was no request or demand for a trade prior to the deadline. There was some leakage out of Cleveland that maybe OBJ wasn't thrilled that he wasn't getting the ball more. But remember, he just came back off the injured list a few weeks ago. And so that just exploded after the deadline. Reports that the Saints had tried to deal for him and that the Browns had not made the deal. His dad releases the video. Next thing you know, we hear he's excused from practice Wednesday, and then he's told not to come to practice on Thursday. So now they are stuck with Odell Beckham Jr., who's coming off, I believe it was an ACL last year, has never been the player he was with the Giants since they traded for him, has a massive contract, and he's doing nothing but complaining and being a distraction. The Bears are here. You've got Allen Robinson literally being used half as much as he was last year. I'll detail that in the column. Go to shawlocal.com. It'll be later on Friday or early on Saturday. I'm not sure which, or else just get our Saturday papers. And yet he's still the leader of the team. I mean, he couldn't be more classy. He, no complaining, trying not to be a distraction. And so it leaves you with this tremendous puzzle as to what's missing there, because it would help both the offense and Justin Fields so much if they could figure out how to use Allen Robinson.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. I think you've missed some news since we started, or while you were working on your column. The Browns announced they are releasing Odell Beckham Jr.
Okay, yeah, I did miss that, and that's good for the Saints, I guess, because now one thing that is different though is that when the trade deadline passes, vested veterans do have to clear waivers. Prior to the trade deadline, if you release a vested veteran the first 8 weeks of the season, they're free to sign with whoever they want. But now Beckham has to go through the waiver process. Now, he also goes into that waiver portal with the contract. And so if you claim him, you've got to claim that big contract.
And really quickly, when it goes to the waiver order, it goes to the goes to the opposite league, the worst team. Is that what it is? Or am I thinking of baseball? I can't remember.
No, it's record. It goes 32-1. So who's winning?
Lions. I think the Lions are first.
Lions get first claim, and then you work through the Jaguars and the Texans and the Dregs and whoever it may be. And the Saints sitting there at 6-2 obviously have to wait a long time. So he may not end up in New Orleans. And I don't even know, because the Saints, even though they spent the offseason cleaning it up, still have salary cap issues. Everybody may take a chance. They may say, let's let him go free, because let's not forget, you're claiming all the sideshow that comes with him.
All right. Well, let's CJ is in the chat here, and he has a question about Odell. And it's going to get asked up. If you go on the radio today, I'm not sure if you have any hits on the score. You're going to get asked if the Bears should consider, either claiming or signing Odell Beckham Jr. So let's tackle it.
All right, CJ Williams, thank you for joining us so much on this week's podcast. And by the way, if you're listening later than Friday morning and are wondering how this is happening, we are live every Friday morning at 9:30 Chicago time via StreamYard. You can get there via YouTube. You can get there through any one of our Twitter accounts. It's at Hub_Arkush, at Sean_Hammond, at Kyle Nabors. And you get instructions there how to get into the podcast, which we are recording video as well, a chance to take your questions. And CJ's up first. Can you explain why claiming OBJ would be bad for the Bears? His current contract is cheaper than what A-Rob wants and is a bit more talented than A-Rob. Well, CJ, there's a whole lot to unpack there. First of all, he is not more talented than A-Rob over the last couple of years. Odell Beckham Jr. coming into the league, I think may have been the most talented rookie receiver we've ever seen. And he had a great sophomore year to follow it up. Ever since then, he's been chasing it, and he certainly has not been a factor in Cleveland. He's been injured the last couple of years, and he's a problem child. Okay. And let's not forget that if, in fact, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are still in complete control of this, which I fully believe they are, at least right now, they've got their no turds rule. And OBJ, never, well, actually, not true. I did interview him once after a game for Monday Night Football, but I started to say I've never met him personally. I did one-on-one interview with him. That doesn't qualify as meeting him personally. He may not be a bad kid, but he certainly has acted out like one his entire stay in the NFL. While his current contract might not be as bad as what A-Rob wants, it's almost impossible for the Bears with their current salary cap situation. So I can't imagine the Bears being a potential destination for him. But stranger things have happened, Sean. We don't know what's going on at Hallis Hall. We don't know what Ryan and Matt are sitting around thinking. We don't know if their jobs are even in jeopardy. They may have already been told, don't worry, we got you, we're developing Fields, but they may be hearing nothing, which usually suggests you are in jeopardy, and they could sit back and think, hey, let's go ahead and make a bold move. What do we got to lose? We could argue that we're bringing in talent. So I'm not saying it's off the table, but I think that the reasons that it's unlikely and unwise far outweigh the reasons that it might happen.
It's hard to predict what the Bears are going to do in some of these situations. When we're talking about the trade deadline and Odell now, because of that, Hub, we don't know exactly what their long-term situation is there. And that makes it a little hard to predict. I don't know. If it's me, the first thing, if I'm getting on the phone with Odell, you just gotta ask, dude, what's the deal? Like, this has been so weird, and your dad's tweeting stuff like just what's the problem? Because it's a really weird situation.
Yeah, Sean, I'm Kyle. I mean, you're buying a basket full of trouble and unknowns.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen the otherworldly talent in a few years now. So it's hard for me to understand why any of the first 15, 18 teams in order would claim him. I mean, does he make you that much better that you want to take on the salary and all this trouble? I would think if he gets claimed, it's got to be by a contending team that thinks that they're a big play receiver away.
Yeah, CJ, if he is claimed, I would think and I would hope that the Bears aren't the team making that claim. I don't think you want to take on that risk at that salary. Now, if he passes through waivers unclaimed, I still don't think he ends up with the Bears. I still think it doesn't work out, even if he does. I don't know how much is left. He's. I mean, at this point, I mean, there's no way you can not label him as a malcontent, right? I mean, the Giants signed him to that deal, and then we're like, yeah, this isn't going to work. We got to get him out of here. He plays his way out of Cleveland, or not really plays his way out of Cleveland. He, weird in a weird way finds his way out of Cleveland. If he goes unclaimed, do you want to take a flyer on him? I mean, I think that's fine, but I certainly wouldn't want to take on the risk.
It's interesting, guys, because Bears fans have long memories when they want to and short memories at other times. But it was less than a decade ago that Brandon Marshall, not single-handedly, but was easily the biggest negative in the destruction of a pretty good football team. And he was being highly productive at the time, which Beckham has not been. Now, in fairness, I mean, Brandon Marshall was a bad guy. I understand he's become a media star now and everybody, whatever, but he was a really bad guy. I'm not saying, that Beckham is that bad, but all we have to look at is that he's now had 2 teams chase him away, and it's been very public, so you have to assume that there are real issues there. I'm sorry, Kyle, were you going to add something?
No, I was going to say, so like guys like Brandon Marshall, I mean, you look at Antonio Brown now getting another chance down in Tampa, but like, I don't think Odell's had a lot of off-field issues in terms of like, I don't know,
Getting stabbed in the chest by his wife.
I mean, like you talk about like the no turd policy. Like, I don't think like that technically applies here. He's just.
Oh no, it does, Kyle. I mean, no turds can be taken in several different ways, and obviously, you don't want somebody who's out getting arrested and getting DUIs and failing drug tests, but you also don't want bad chemistry in the locker room, and that's clear.
Well,
why else would Cleveland be releasing him right now?
Right. I get it. And here's the other thing. Do you feel like you have the locker room and the coaching staff that can absorb that? Like, there are some guys, I mean, I think you've seen it, and this is to a lesser extent, but like Leonard Fournette, Jacksonville, after spending a first round pick and he was decently productive there, pretty much shows him the door. He almost played his way out of Tampa too, until Bruce Arians essentially told him, "Do you want to be here? Either buy in or get out." Mm-hmm. And he's been pretty productive ever since. So like, if you want to take a chance, like, Matt Nagy and his staff can be those people that can say to Odell Beckham, "Listen, we're going to give you a chance, but either you buy in or get out." But I don't think there's any indication that you should feel very comfortable with that at this point, right?
Well, no, and Sean, you add to that, Matt Nagy and the coaches can say whatever they want. I'm sure Kevin Stefanski, did what he could with him in Cleveland. When we talk about the locker room, it's the players' locker room. It's not the coaches. The coaches can tell you what the rules are, but it's the players who have to police it and make sure that they're in a good place, that they have a good locker room. And so you could say, well, Jason Peters could handle him, but is Jason Peters going to be here after 8 weeks? And is he even cemented enough now that he wants to take that aggravation on? Because when you go past Jason Peters, I will tell you that the rookie Justin Fields and the 3rd year David Montgomery and the 2nd year Darnell Mooney and the 2nd year Cole Kmet, who now have to be the leaders of this offense. No, the last thing they need is to have to deal with an Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, so it just, to me, it feels like a really bad fit.
Yeah, and it's easy to say, follow along or get out of here if you're Tampa Bay and you got Tom Brady and you're a serious contender. It's a lot harder to do that when you have not a great track record, and who knows if you're really serious about contending.
Yeah, a wide receiver like that might pay attention to a Tom Brady. He may not to Justin Fields. Like, you don't want someone coming in and being, a pain in the ass with your rookie quarterback.
Yeah, no, I think that OBJ would be a horrible idea. I think he probably clears waivers and then ends up a Saint, on probation, so to speak. That'd be ironic, wouldn't it? A guy gets kicked out for being a bad guy and he ends up a Saint. A little semantics there, guys. I'm sorry. At any rate, the other big story, and we're not going to dwell on it, but we can't ignore it, is the situation up in Green Bay. You would think that they own the division at this point. The Vikings were busy giving away a game last Sunday night as badly as the Bears were to Dallas. So they're sitting there now at 3-4. The Bears are 3-5. The Packers at 7-1. Are in complete control. They don't.
You don't even mention the Lions, the poor Lions.
Yeah, well, I mean, why would I? Have they bitten any kneecaps lately? Is there something we got to report? The Packers obviously, can afford a bit of a setback. But what's fascinating about this is how big a setback this is going to be. Aaron Rodgers is not going to get Wally pipped by Jordan Love. I think I can say that with some security. But it is going to be very interesting to see how Jordan Love performs in his first NFL start. And there's a very good chance that he could get 2, depending on the timing of all this with Rodgers, when he gets his negative tests and when the clock started. Because as being unvaccinated, he's out a minimum of 10 days. And this test came back on Wednesday. So, I don't know if you count Wednesday or not. If you count Wednesday, then he would be eligible to come off again a week from Friday. If you don't count Wednesday, he's eligible to come off Saturday. That's the day before a game. We'll see what happens there. But then you get to the other side of it is the Packers are going to be punished for this. Aaron Rodgers lied. You can play the semantics game all you want, but I watched the tape again last night where he said, I'm not going to comment on unvaccinated players. They have to make choices. I am immunized. And he clearly suggested that he had been vaccinated, and never told anybody that he'd actually received some homeopathic Donald Trump like
alternative treatment.
Yeah, hydroxychloroquine, whatever, and then petitioned the league to make an exception for him because, hey, I'm Aaron Rodgers. You've got to make an exception for me and treat me as a vaccinated player. The league immediately said no. The Packers have known that since before the season started, and yet Rodgers has violated all of the protocols for unvaccinated players. And so it is going to be interesting. And again, guys, another case of showing no concern for his team, his teammates, his fan base. Not that he has to get vaccinated for them. I think he does. I think socially that's a responsibility everybody has, but that's my opinion. There are people who are against vaccines. Okay, Aaron, you want to be against vaccines? It's a choice you're allowed to make, but you're not allowed to break the rules for unvaccinated players. And so in that, you just threw your team's well-being away. You again showed no concern for anybody but Aaron Rodgers. And so, guys, the question is, what kind of impact does this have on the Packers?
Go ahead, Kyle.
I left you both speechless. Huh?
Well, I have no idea how it impacts. I mean, they'll be fine. They can afford to take a hit. They'll probably come back and play fine. I think it makes it easier. We already know that they're very, very likely going to separate after the end of this year. I just think that makes it easier. I probably think it's easier to sell that to their fan base when that comes. I do think I'm intrigued to find out how the NFL, you talk about coming down on the Packers. I mean, the NFL has some explaining to do here too, right? It's not like they didn't know that he was or they knew he was unvaccinated. You're telling me that no one in the league office saw him on sideline unmasked, saw him in press conferences unmasked? Like, they had to know that he was flaunting the rules. So, like, it just seems silly, or not silly, but like a double standard. I don't know the best way to put it. They knew,
Well, yeah, but I think the question is who knew what and how closely are they policing this stuff? I don't disagree with you, Kyle, but I mean,
I think clearly they're not policing it very close at all.
Well, and they really can't. I mean,
I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that they have the manpower to police every guy who's not wearing a mask.
Yeah, there's 1,800 and some players. I don't know that they even know for sure which ones are vaccinated and which aren't. I don't know what the privacy rules are with the HIPAA laws. I'm not sure that they can demand that information. We don't really know, to be honest with you, which is what makes this all so interesting. And what I think one of the upshots of this is there's probably other guys besides Rodgers cheating on this, who possibly even lied. I don't know that they can. Well, I think as a private business, they can force you to show your vaccination card. I don't want to get into things that I'm not real clear on. But at the end of the day, what's going to be interesting to me, Sean, is that there were outbreaks last year because of violation of the protocols, serious outbreaks in Tennessee, with Denver. With Denver, I think there was a third team, and they all received significant fines, but nothing else. I think what's curious about this is that because Rodgers applied for an exemption and didn't get it, and everybody was aware of it, and he flaunted the rules anyway, it's going to be interesting to see if this might cost the Packers a draft choice in addition to some fines, because certainly the Packers knew what was going on and did nothing about it. And it has to be their obligation before it's the league's obligation. And I know I get in trouble with this with Bears fans all the time, and I could care less because I'm just being honest. The Packers organization is one of, if not the best organization in football. I have tremendous respect for Mark Murphy and the way he runs that football team. But this is a case where they screwed up, big time. And Sean, it's going to be curious to see if the league wants to slap them down to make a point.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. And, if you're Aaron Rodgers, if you're against the vaccine or whatever, just come out and own it. I don't understand why, I think I've talked about it we talked about it in the summer and I mentioned it on our podcast before, but I just love the way that he was honest in his preseason press conference or whatever. He said what he thought, he spoke his mind, but then to read something like this or hear about it on the radio or whatever, it's just so disingenuous and he lied. I mean, I think the Packers, something's going to happen here. We'll have to see how this plays out. Aaron Rodgers is going to be back on the field eventually, but certainly there's going to be some sort of ramifications for this.
How many swear words did the higher ups at State Farm let out when that news broke?
Guys, honest and Aaron Rodgers was just used in the same sentence for the first time. I mean, that's just not who this guy is. He is one of the five greatest players of all. I don't know about greatest players. He's certainly one of the five greatest quarterbacks of all time. He's an exceptional player. Nobody is going to sit here and try and find anything wrong with his game. But he has now piled up such a mountain of evidence off the field that he's not a good guy. I don't want to get emotional and get carried away and start calling names here. He's a really bad human being. I think he's proven that in a lot of different ways. And the only reason it matters to me is because I see now his team and his fan base suffering for it, and that's just not right. And hey, Wisconsin's different than Illinois, and Illinois is different than Arizona, and Arizona is different than New York. I don't want to single out Wisconsinites. But the state has shown that it is a little more forgiving of not jumping on the bandwagon for all the COVID protocols necessary. I'm not talking about where anybody's at politically or anything like that. And so they may be more accepting of it. It depends now on what happens in Kansas City Sunday. It depends now on when he gets back. It depends now. The most interesting part of all this to me is I want to see Jordan Love. I want to know where this kid is at. And we're going to start to get an idea Sunday, because that's why Brett Favre was eventually chased out of Green Bay. They knew after 3 years that Aaron Rodgers was ready. Now, there's no way that Jordan Love was ready last year. There's no way that he was ready at the beginning of this year. But the reports are that he did show a fair amount of improvement during the offseason, had a much better training camp this year. And so we're going to find out on Sunday just how close this kid is. And I think it's also, guys, kind of fascinating for the Bears and Justin Fields, because now you're going to see the other side of the coin. Now, Fields was drafted 11th, Jordan Love was drafted 26th, but now we're going to get a first-round quarterback who clearly was not ready for the NFL, but is an exceptional athlete with a great arm. And we're going to see what a year and a half of watching has done to prepare him for his first game, maybe couple games, as opposed to what the Bears chose to do, which was throwing Fields right into the fire.
I think if you're a Bears fan, and maybe this is just me, but I would be rooting for Love to play really well, because it's just going to cause some chaos and some discussions up in Green Bay.
I'd be rooting for him to perform rather poorly. I don't think you want any signs that the heir to the throne is going to be able to pick it up and just keep beating you around the block.
Yeah, I think the transition from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers has been painful enough. I don't think anybody wants to see that happen. And plus, Sean, you get another issue, is if he does play really well, then why did the Bears do what they did with Justin Fields? I mean, I've been outspoken about this. I will continue to be. It's based on, as we've said, decades and decades of covering this game and experience. Justin Fields, I think, is a great talent and is going to be a great football player, because I think he can overcome the extra hurdles the Bears have put up for him by forcing him to play when he's not ready. And I think that's what they've done. If Love comes out and plays really well, that's just going to heat the argument that much more. And at this point, the Bears are committed, so I don't think they need to hear that debate anymore.
Well, and he's got the good old Chiefs defense to work with, so that's already exploitable situation for the young guy.
Let's switch back over here, since we're talking Justin Fields a little bit here. Rick has a question about Justin and Allen Robinson that I think we should address.
Okay. Rick Gonzalez is a regular contributor to the podcast, and we do appreciate that, Rick. You want to know why has Allen Robinson and Justin Fields not seemed to be on the same page? Well, Rick, that's the $64,000 question, and I can tell you emphatically it's not for some of the ridiculous reasons that again, the haters want to throw out there. Matt Nagy's a moron for not making Justin Fields the starter on day one, and he missed all those reps with Robinson in training camp and off season. Well, if that's true, he missed every one of those reps with Darnell Mooney too. And it's not causing any problems with Darnell Mooney, is it? So, practice is important, but that's a really lame excuse as to why they're not using him properly now. There are two things that I'm seeing as you study this. Well, there's three things I'm seeing as you study this tape and try and understand it and make sense of what's going on. Number one is that there are no signs on the tape that Allen Robinson has lost anything. I mean, it's not as if he's struggling physically out there, as if he's suddenly coming off back-to-back 100 reception seasons, has lost it. He's 28 years old. He appears to be in as good a shape and as physically able as ever. So that leads us to the other two possibilities. One is that, and this is the reality, even though people may not want to hear it, Justin Fields is still so far away from being a complete NFL quarterback. He doesn't read the field. He doesn't necessarily read coverage as well all the time. He is not able to yet process his choices and his options quickly enough. And he's going to the first guy he sees or the guys he's gotten the most comfortable with. And right now, that's Darnell Mooney, and it's beginning to be Cole Kmet too. Now, one of the reasons for that is defenses are still smart enough to know that Robinson is still the most dangerous guy on the field, so they're putting some extra coverage his way, and that's why you're finding Mooney a little more open at times than Robinson, who always appears to be in tighter windows. That's number one. Number two, which really concerns me, is it appears that the Bears have even schemed away from Allen Robinson. And this opens all kinds of nefarious possibilities, guys. Does it have to do with the contract? Are they trying to keep his price down? You hate to even think things like that. But Robinson is clearly not the primary target as often as Darnell Mooney is, and there was one thing that Matt Nagy said in his visit with us on Thursday. I'm going to save that for the column because I don't think anybody else has seized on it yet. It got buried in something else he was talking about. So get to shawlocal.com regularly, but the column that I have coming on Allen Robinson, there's an interesting point in there from the head coach. But guys, it's a combination of that Fields is not finding him, not looking for him, that the offense is not scheming to force him to go there, that he is not the first choice in his progressions often enough. And then you get to the last part, and Sean, you were sitting near me in the room. I know when Bill Lazor said this 2 weeks ago, he said one of the things that is going to take some time in Justin Fields' development, and he did it with air quotes, was understanding the difference between air quote NFL open and all other kinds of football open, close quote. And those are the reasons that Allen Robinson isn't more productive right now.
I really think that's the biggest reason. We were talking about it a couple of weeks ago, and Allen Robinson is still, among the lowest in terms of separation according to the advanced metrics. He's got guys all over him during these games, and I think there's just a little bit of a hesitancy to throw to him in these tight windows. And you go back to what made Allen Robinson successful the last couple of years, and Mitch Trubisky was not afraid to throw it to him even when it looked like he wasn't open. And we've seen we've seen some passes from Justin Fields like that. There was a one against Detroit I'm thinking of a couple of weeks ago that Fields apparently went up to A-Rob and said, "You didn't think I was going to throw that, did you?" But there just needs to be more of that, because and it's hard to tell a rookie quarterback that, because throwing into tight windows is obviously a dangerous thing. There's a fine line to walk there, but I think it's, that's how Allen Robinson makes his money. That's what he's good at. So you need to take advantage of that.
Well, and Kyle, there's one more piece of this too, which is every other defense in the NFL, or at least the one the Bears have played, are telling you that Allen Robinson is the guy that can beat him. The reason he has the lowest separation distance is because they're taking him away. That's how you win NFL games. As you look at the other team, you take away their best weapon. In the case of the Bears offense, Justin Fields is the most important weapon right now, but the two best weapons are Allen Robinson and David Montgomery. Injury took Montgomery off the field. Unfortunately, Khalil Herbert was there. Teams are going to let the Bears do some running on them because they know in this NFL it's hard to win without a passing game. They're taking Robinson away, and until Fields understands that actually they haven't completely taken him away, until he is reading these defenses correctly and understanding, everything he's trying to see at once, that's going to continue to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have hit on all three things pretty much here. I don't know how much more I can add, because they are taking him away. The Bears certainly are not running route combinations that highlight Allen Robinson. And the third, and I kind of felt like a wet blanket on Sunday night. I was texting you, Hub, like everyone was super excited about Justin Fields' progression, the touchdown run, the really good throw to Jesse James, and it was excellent. But the next step, and he still isn't there, is a lot the big running plays. I think Sean had it in Bear Down Nerd Up. A vast majority of the yardage were on scrambles, and that was great. He was more decisive there. The other side of that, though, is he still needs to keep his eyes downfield, and he wasn't doing that again this week.
Well, guys, and this is the part that just too many fans don't understand, is that Justin Fields has consistently done, other than the Cleveland game, what Justin Fields can do. As a pure athlete, he's going to make a half a dozen plays a game that most guys can't, because most guys aren't as good as him, okay, athletically. But the offense isn't getting better. It isn't about Justin Fields getting better. It's about Justin Fields and the offense getting better, and the offense getting better because Justin Fields is understanding and grasping the mental part of the game. He doesn't have any mental shortcomings. It's not mental issues. It's not a learning disability. It's none of that. It takes a long time. And Bears fans can gush over the couple plays he makes all they want. But the complete package isn't coming anytime soon. He did get better Sunday. He
absolutely did.
His decision making on the run was better, but his decision making in the passing game didn't really change all that much.
No, it didn't. It did improve a little bit when they got him moving. When they moved the pocket, when they got him out on the sides and designed passing plays where he was bootlegging out, that helped some. But the thing is, and you see this with a really good quarterback, and it takes time, okay? And I do think Justin Fields, we got a question I'm going to throw up here for Michael Jones in a second to address kind of the long-term thought on Justin Fields. But what you start seeing with the really good quarterbacks is when they decide they're going to, either they pull it down and they say, okay, I'm running, which is what Justin did last week. When they get to be really good is when you see them able to direct traffic with their eyes, when they're moving out to that side and they're able to move that defensive back, or they're able to tell their receiver where to go to get away from a defensive back as they scramble and they start making that throw. That's where Justin Fields isn't yet. That takes time. I do think he will get there, but that's where that's why you're gonna see ups and downs. Until he's able to do that, it's gonna be rocky.
Well, and Sean, here's the other piece of that I'm really curious about, because I don't know the answer to it. But, and I think we talked about this right after the play up in the press box, is that it was we're talking obviously about the touchdown to Jesse James. It was a great play at a great moment in the game. It changed the momentum, albeit only for a minute or two. And it was a play that only a handful of guys can make. The problem is that even that handful of guys only makes that play, one or two, maybe 3 out of 10 times, because everything had to be perfect. If he is off by 6 inches, that could be an interception more easily than it was a touchdown catch. His mechanics were awful. You never want him throwing across the body with 1 foot, a foot and a half off the ground. Now, all that is not criticizing, because, again, he can do those things. He is special. But when you look at the tape, he also could have probably definitely more easily run for the first down, and it was better than 50-50. He was going to the end zone. If you look at the tape, there is nothing in front of him. And the only 2 guys in front of him are the 2 guys trailing Jesse James. He's wide open there. And so what I'm curious about is breaking down the film afterwards. Did the coaches say, okay, great play, son. We love you. You're the best. All wonderful. But here's the thing. If we get that play 10 times, your odds of success if you pull it down and run are 50-50. Your odds of throwing it are 2 in 10. That's the coaching. We don't know what's going on, but that's what he has to learn if he's going to become an elite quarterback.
Yeah, Kyle, I don't know if do we have any more questions in the chat here? You want to?
Well, because this all ties into Michael's question. I want to get just, we're running short on time, and then there's a question from Twin in here that I also want to get before we wrap up, because it all kind of ties together here.
All right. Well, Michael Jones is with us and wants to know, if the Bears keep Nagy and the other offensive coaches, do you honestly see Fields reaching his full potential or becoming a should have been but never was QB? Mike, I don't know.
It's a complicated question.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Nagy is not the complete incompetent that people want to paint him as. He's somehow the narrative has gotten out of hand. It's really pretty ridiculous. He's ironically, and I know this upsets people when I tell the truth, but he's still a better than 500 head coach in the NFL. You don't find many of those guys getting fired, and so that's not to say that in this situation he's done a good enough job to get another contract. I certainly am not taking a position on that yet. We've seen what five. We've actually, with the injury in the Bengals game, we've seen 6 field starts now. We'll see. I don't think that Matt Nagy did Mitch Trubisky any favors, but I don't think he ruined them all by himself either. At this point, Mitch had a great exhibition game against the Bears. We don't know much beyond that, so we'll see. Sean, Kyle, I don't know what you
guys. Matt Nagy isn't going to ruin Justin Fields. Justin Fields has too much talent for Matt Nagy. Now you can make an argument, or if you want to say that listen, I'm by no means like this smart football guy, but like if I'm able to identify the things that Justin Fields is still needing to work on to get to where I would consider to be an already above average QB, like Justin Fields knows how to do that. It's just going to take him time. So Matt Nagy's not going to ruin him. I think the better question is, can Justin Fields be a great QB maybe with this coaching staff? I think its floor is good though.
I think it's absolutely fair to question whether Nagy and the staff is right for him. That's totally fair to raise these conversations. And we've seen sometimes Nagy can try to fit a square peg into a round hole, so to speak. And I think it really just comes down to more so than Justin Fields is going to be Justin Fields. He's a talented guy. He's got the athleticism. I think it comes down to, are they running the right system for him? And maybe that's something that we're still trying to figure out here. And that maybe Nagy is still trying to figure out what exactly is the best way to get the most out of this guy.
Yeah. And Mike, to be clear, I don't think it's a bad question. I think it's a good question. I just don't have the answer for it. And again, you look for all the evidence, whether people want to accept it or not. He was Patrick Mahomes' offensive coordinator and quarterback coach his entire rookie year. Now, I know almost all of it was spent on the bench, but nonetheless, he emerged immediately, like week 1 or 2 the following season. And I'm not saying give Nagy credit for it, but he obviously didn't destroy him, and so Sean, to your point, I think what's so exciting about Fields is he appears to have all the talent you could want, and he could excel in almost any system, so he was handpicked for, this system. So that's one that, Mike, the best we can do is watch and wait.
I want to throw this up here because is it true that Mac Jones has more design runs so far this season than Fields? How is that possible? This narrative needs to stop. Like, Justin Fields is not Jalen Hurts. He is not Lamar Jackson. He is not Kyler Murray. Like, you look back at Ohio State, he is not a run-first quarterback. Like, yes, he is able to do a lot of great things with his legs when needed. But, like, he is an elite passing prospect. You do not want him being Lamar Jackson.
Well, yeah, and specifically to the question, this one I absolutely can answer. We have no idea how many designed runs either Mac Jones or Justin Fields has. You can pretend and kid yourself all you want that when you're sitting at home watching on television that you know what the play call is. You can pretend and kid yourself all you want that you're an opposing coach studying film and that you know what the play call was. The NFL has become an RPO league. It has become a zone read league. It's got players making decisions, and every play has 3 or 4 different variations that they're trying to decide on, and getting all 11 guys, some of whom each have different decisions on all these variations, to make the right decision at the right time. That's what these offenses in the NFL are about today. And nobody knows how many exactly designed runs Mac Jones or Justin Fields have had between the RPOs and everything else. So, while Kyle is right, Justin Fields can be and will be most successful as primarily a pocket passer. He is athletic enough. He should be having design runs. He is a better athlete than Mac Jones. He should have more design runs than Mac Jones. But we have no idea how many design runs either one of them has had to this point through 8 weeks.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Hub.
All right, let's jump over here. We had a question from Twin as we get ready to wrap this up. We're coming up on an hour here. Sorry, guys, trying to find it here. There you go, Hub.
All right, Twin 129 checking in. We're not really getting a lot of production out of Damiere Byrd. A lot. Zero. I think is the point there. Are we going to be able to see Daz Newsome or Perryman sometime this year? I would think so. Guys, I've questioned this. I think starting week 2, and every week since. I'm not sure why Damiere Byrd is here. And for that matter, Marquise Goodwin either. And these guys, by the way, are great young men. I mean, I'm glad they're here. I'm glad they have jobs. I'm glad, for them and their families. But in terms of being part of the answer for the Bears, they went out this offseason and said, speed, speed, speed. They recruited an Olympic track team. I will ask each of you, how many fly patterns have you seen from either Damiere Byrd or Marquise Goodwin in trying to do what you set out to do, which is take the top off of defense? How many times have they even tried it with either one of them? And I'll add something that gets back to what we were talking about half an hour ago. The shots that they're trying to set up, most of them have been to Allen Robinson, who is not your deep guy, but he's the guy that they've tried to get behind the secondary, while teams aren't even really paying much attention to Byrd and Goodwin. So this is where you get to the scheme in this offense, and you don't blame Fields for that. You wonder what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and I don't know about you guys. I'm beginning to wonder if Perriman is here to be that fallback option if somebody gets hurt. I mean, I don't know why you would bring him in, and it's been this long and he hasn't seen the field.
You say he should be up to speed on the offense by this point. I mean, it's partially scheme, and it's partially that. I mean, at some point we probably have to accept that these guys just aren't very good. This is because of the salary cap situation where the Bears needed to invest in the offseason. They had to go to the bargain bin, and they went to the bargain bin when it came to wide receiver.
Guys, that's a question I absolutely can answer. Rashad Perriman was not brought here to be an answer. He was brought here to be a lottery ticket. I always confuse this. He's with either his 7th team in 6 years or his 6th team in 7 years. Okay. He's a former number 1 draft choice. He is here strictly because at Central Florida, he did some nice things. He was a late bloomer. They thought he could be developed. He runs a 4.26 40-yard dash. He's here for the same reasons that Marquise Goodwin and Damiere Byrd are here, and they're not using any of them, and we don't know how much they're even seeing practice time. I mean, this is the mystery of the Bears, and this is a place, and we're going to kind of have to wrap it up here. But guys, the media has an interesting relationship with the Bears, and I try to never discuss it publicly because it just comes across as us whining about, oh, my job's so hard, which really has nothing to do with it. Different NFL teams have different viewing rules for practice. There was a time, like the first, 35 years of my career, that we just watched practice and it was never a problem. And then in the last 10 to 15 years, teams have started running, highly classified, eyes only CIA type, front offices, and decided that, oh, you can't watch practice. You might give away a state secret. So the league rules require we're allowed to watch the first, I think it's like 8.5 to 10 minutes, which is stretching and agility drills. I mean, there is no team whatsoever. We don't know what they're doing during the week. We don't know what they're setting up or what they're trying to practice. And so I guys, the three of them, Goodwin, Byrd, and Perriman, I'm not sure why any of them are here.
I don't have anything to add. Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Sean, why is Jimmy Graham here?
I mean, these are all fair questions. Yeah, I don't know why.
And I can tell you half the answer. The answer is because you have a quarterback who doesn't know the offense, and that's not because he's a bad quarterback. That's because he's not ready. It's because it takes so long. But the other half is you try and help that young quarterback and develop him by taking his weapons and putting them in accessible positions. And that's not happening either.
Yeah, and they're just not getting the ball around to there's a lot of guys who aren't seeing the ball as much as they would like. We just mentioned a bunch of them, and maybe that's part of the scheme and just what they've decided to try to do here these last couple of weeks. But yeah, we certainly have not seen the speed, and we haven't seen, a lot of those guys are just missing in action.
Well, and in fairness, Kyle, we're gonna have to wrap it up here, but this is why so many people rightfully are questioning Matt Nagy. That is his job. Guys, I am troubled as to exactly how the decision was made. And even to be more blunt, who finally said, Justin Fields is now the number one quarterback going out to Las Vegas. I would love to get more information on that because it clearly was not the plan until something happened between the Monday and Wednesday, before that Raiders game. But once you made the commitment, it is still your job, to give the kid the best chance to succeed. I think that this team had a chance to once again contend, for middle of the pack playoff status. I don't know if they could win a playoff game or not. I think that sticking with the veteran quarterback and the game manager, clearly, the offense is going to be more consistent, if nothing else. I think that they possibly win the Packers game. I think that they probably do win the 49ers game, although that's not fair because the defense came apart. But there's games coming that could be impacted by Fields' lack of development to data as well. So, the chance to be judged on the record, the chance to be judged on winning a playoff game, that went away when they made the commitment to Fields. There's no way they were going to be a better offense and a better team with a rookie quarterback who didn't know what he was doing. So now the way you have to judge Nagy, and I guess I don't know if it's fair. I don't know how you judge Pace this way, but the way you have to judge Nagy is how much better is the offense and how much better is Justin Fields on the first Sunday after Christmas or New Year's, whenever the season is. It's after New Year's, I think, than he is right now. And if they don't find a way to use some of these weapons we're talking about, it probably isn't going to be pretty. And that's probably why there's a good chance that there could be a coaching change.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you have to judge Matt Nagy. And I guess for Ryan Pace, the way you judge him is, do you feel like he's put enough talent around Justin Fields for him to succeed? Because you knew at some point this year Justin Fields was going to be on the field. And I guess that's the way you have to view it, right? You're probably not going to fire your GM over. I wouldn't think you're firing your GM over the success of your rookie quarterback in 1 year. You want to give a GM more than that, but you can give him the boot on based on the entire body of his work, I guess, at this point.
It's an interesting question, Sean. I posed this one to Kyle. We were talking a week or two ago, and I've stayed away from it because I don't have a particularly good answer. You're probably more capable than I am of writing a good column on this one. But the reality is, if you're firing your head coach, it's because he didn't do enough with the talent he had to work with. I mean, if you don't think he has the talent to succeed, then why are you firing him? And so if that's the case, then you're apparently saying that Ryan Pace did enough to win. If you turn it around and you're firing the GM, it's because he didn't give the coach enough to work with. So this business of being joined at the hip, it does create some interesting, questions minimally.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I think it would be super interesting if they did fire Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace stayed in place, because I don't know. That would just surprise me. But that's kind of what you're saying, Hub. I mean, that's certainly possible.
I'm going on vacation the week that happened. I don't want to deal with the anger that is going to be directed at everyone, even tangentially associated with the Bears or the Bears beat.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance of that, guys. And that's unfortunate because the question I just posed is fair, and I'm not sure anybody has a good answer for it. But the way this thing has developed and the way this snowball's rolling downhill right now, I think they either both go or they don't.
I agree. Yeah.
No,
I say that, but I'm with you.
It's not going to be one or the other. If this thing continues on the current course, they're both gonna. I would be very surprised if they both weren't gone.
What's the word, guys? What's the catchphrase? What's the focus of this whole operation? The way they work together. What's the word? I lost the word. Yeah, the collaboration between Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy is what we've told is the reason for their quote success. That's why George McCaskey and Ted Phillips were comfortable keeping them. So if it's the collaboration, it's kind of hard to keep one and not the other, or to fire one or not the other. Look at it positively or negatively. But I think the one thing we can say with some certainty is if there is a change, it's almost certainly going to be both. It's unlikely to be one or the other. We are, again, the problem, I hope other folks enjoy listening to this as much as we seem to enjoy doing it, because we always set out to go 45 minutes and somehow go an hour and 10, because it's just fun, and we hope you're all enjoying it. Again, for those of you who are listening later than Friday morning at 9:30, you can join these podcasts live and participate by going to YouTube or go to any one of our Twitter accounts at Sean_Hammond, at Kyle Nabors, at Hub_Arkush, or you can just go to the App Store on your phone or iTunes and download a subscription to the podcast. Either way, we really appreciate everybody for joining us, for listening. We hope that you are going to shawlocal.com or buying one of our Shaw newspapers, obviously, every day. We do have I think the best, but certainly as good and as thorough a Bears coverage as anybody in town.
I'll call it the best.
There you go. Okay, well,
I'll pump us up.
As our editor, you can do that. As the writers, we sound like jerks if we say it. So, guys, have a great week, everybody. Maybe, hey, we didn't. I guess we have to before we go. I can't pick the Bears to beat anybody right now off what I saw last Sunday. I think there's a good chance they beat the Steelers. I don't think the Steelers are very good. I think the Bears could have a bounce back, but they've shown us nothing in recent weeks to suggest that they're doing the kind of things to show that they are better than a 3-5 football team. So I don't know how you don't pick the Steelers. I don't really have a score yet, but I don't see this pain ending Monday night. What about you, Sean?
Yeah, I don't see it either. I'm at the point where I don't know if I'm going to be picking the Bears until they prove me wrong, except maybe when they face the Lions.
Kyle?
The Steelers' offensive line is terrible. I mean, it's bad. Ben Roethlisberger has been in decline for several years, and the wheels have completely fallen off. He can't get the ball downfield at all this year. With that being said, I don't think Khalil Mack is going to play in this game, so I'm going to go ahead and have to pick the Steelers because after seeing that against the Niners, which didn't exactly have a flourishing offense coming in, there's no reason to believe that it's going to be any different against the Steelers.
Yeah, and in fairness, guys, it doesn't make the Bears any better of a football team. But I think I haven't looked. I think I'm 6-2 picking these games so far. I think the only ones I had wrong were I had the Raiders beating the Bears and I lost another one. And I think you guys are all right in that ballpark too, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so. Our guy Jake Bartleson, who does a 3 and Out for us every week, which is, if you guys read that, give a shout out to Jake because that is one of the harder things to write because you're trying to write that during the game and have it up right as the game ends. But I think Jake is undefeated on the year.
Yeah, I mean, guys, again, it certainly isn't just Sean and I. I mean, as I said, our coverage is outstanding. Jake is a great fourth member of the team. Michael's joined us now, too. I mean, we do seem to be picking these guys right or close to right. Not that I want you all betting against your favorite team, but, I'd be surprised if a whole lot of folks pick the Bears over the Steelers Monday night. Hopefully they will shock the world. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, we're going to say goodbye. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week.